Episode 62, the Late Night Vision Show. Thank y'all for joining us. I am Hans, 50% of this show. But before I bring in the co-host, Mr. Jason Robertson, the owner of Outdoor Legacy Gear, I want to tell you and invite y'all to go check him out on all the socials. But also, if you're looking to purchase a thermal or a night vision scope, please go find him on outdoorlegacygear.com. Or you can also call him at 877-350-1818. Had a hard time kind of spitting that out. But what's going on, Jason?
Man, not much at all, and I appreciate that. I had a guy call today, and he said, I cannot believe that you answered the phone. And I said, yeah. I said, sorry about that. It took me a little while to get to the phone. I said I was taking the trash out and sweeping the floor. So, no, I told him my office manager is out for the week, and Hans knows this. It's I've been doing double duty, and you don't realize how much somebody does until they're not around. Yeah, exactly. It's been double duty this week. But Hans has been helping out, so it's been all good. Yeah. Well, what's going on with you this week, man?
Big shout out to Michaela, who's driving to New Mexico right now.
That's right.
Across country.
That's right.
Jason misses you, so come back soon.
Please come back. We're actually on week 2, so yeah, this is not good.
So also go check out, obviously you can find the Late Night Vision Show on all the socials, but please go check out the new, I say new, it's fairly new, but the website, thelatenightvision.show.com. That's where you can find all of our past podcast episodes, and you can click on them. It goes right to YouTube, and please go subscribe to us on YouTube as well. But so Jason, this week's show is all about the NVision Halo LR. It is one that you and I have been looking at and testing for a long time. We've got a lot of scope time behind this unit, and we're ready, to really talk about it because this thing is incredible. But before we get to that, before we get to all the juicy stuff and the meat and potatoes, Jason's going to go over the specs, and then we're going to talk a little bit about our impressions with it, our experience with it, and also do a little bit of a comparison between this and the Trijicon comparable model before we get all into that. But man, I can't wait to hear these specs.
Well, let's jump into this. I do want to mention a few things about NVision because I know it's a name that not everybody is familiar with. And NVision is, in one way, they're a new player, and another way, they're an old player. They are fairly new to the commercial market, but they have been dealing with the law enforcement and military side for many years. I believe maybe close to 15 years. 15. So, yeah, they've been around a long time. They just have really, I was going to say, stuck their toe into the commercial market, but I don't think they did. They jumped off in the deep end and basically are challenging Trijicon, which is, this is what NVision is doing. They've come out with, the creme de la creme, the highest in, thermal rifle scopes that they could come out with to challenge the best that's on the consumer market right now. And that's what they've done. And so anyway, I just like to mention them. But, some people say, who are they? I'm not familiar. And they're a name that, has really exploded on the market this year in the thermal market and will just continue, I believe, as time goes on, especially if they keep producing scopes like this. One more thing I want to say is this scope has been on the market for several months. Hans and I have used it. Hans killed a bunch of stuff with it, used it for a long time. I could barely get it away from him. And
I had to rip it out of my hands.
I did. I was like, give me that thing back. But no. So we have not intentionally, not done a review. We did a review on the regular Halo, and this is the LR, the long range model. To be honest, we just kind of forgot that we hadn't done one. We both thought we had. We were talking about it, and I said, I don't know if we've done an LR review. When you do these every single week, sometimes they run together. We can't remember what we've talked about. So,
well, we talked about NVision a lot back around January.
We did.
SHOT Show. It seemed like every other show we were talking about NVision, but the Halo LR was the last unit that we got from them, and a lot of things have developed since then, and a lot of new stuff coming out. But I tell you, my using that scope is fresh on my mind because I'm going to tell you it. Well, I'll let you get into that. I'll let you get into the specs.
All right. I got a sidetrack, so we'll jump back on the specs. So here we go. It is a 3.5 power base optical magnification. It has a 60 hertz refresh rate. It is using the BAE 640 by 480 12 micron thermal core. And I know NVision has to get tired of this, but you can't talk about this and not compare them to Trijicon, because that's, again, who they've intentionally gone after in this market. But that is
I don't think they mind.
I don't think they mind either. This is the exact same thermal core that the Trijicons use. I mean, it is the same thermal core. They have an OLED display, and it is the same exact display that Trijicon uses as well. So, again, 3.5 power, 60 hertz, 640 by 480, 12 micron BAE thermal core. A couple things that I find interesting are the actual physical size and the weight. It is 8.5 inches long, 3.2 inches by 3.1 inches. So it's very blocky. It's almost a perfect square, and it's made out of some sort of composite housing. And I want to speak to that real quick. I know that's something that some people have been concerned about. That's not a metal housing, and I'll let Hans give his 2 cents when he's given his thoughts on the scope. But personally, I'm so used to these composite housing scopes that they don't bother me a single bit. I have banged them around, had no issues at all. And to be honest, I would rather drop one of these, quote unquote plastic scopes than I would metal, because metal dents and metal bends, and this plastic seems to, you can bounce these things around a little bit better. And don't ask me how I know about some of these scopes that you can.
Not for me.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things you don't know exactly what it's made out of. Composite or whatever.
Yep.
It reminds me of being a kid, and my dad, we'd be walking in a field, and he'd say, "You see that over there on the ground?" I say, "Yeah." He's like, "That's from an airplane." And I'll be like, "Oh, wow, man, that's awesome. How do you know that?" And he's like, "Well, it ain't on one, is it?" That's off an airplane.
Oh my gosh. All right. So getting back to it, it's got an IPX6/7 rating. That means it is fully waterproof, fully submersible, and completely dust proof as well. It has a 50 millimeter objective lens, and it has, again, I mentioned the 3.5 power, so it has a 2x and 4x digital zoom, and the price is $7,495. It takes 4 CR123A batteries, and again, just like the other BAE cores, it is a manual nuke or a manual refresh. You have to close the lens cap and press the button to recalibrate the thermal core. So there's no automatic calibrate there. There is no internal video recording. If you want to record video, you can either do it from behind the eyepiece, or you can plug in a cable and use a standard MDVR. And it also does have the option with a power cable that you can run it off of USB external power. So you got all that going for it. Again, those are just the basic specs. I'm going to let Hans kind of jump in and talk about his thoughts on using it in the field and what he thought about it.
So when both of these scopes were released back several months ago, you and I were talking, and you have the regular Halo, which you and I have already used and we've done a review on, and you have the Halo LR. So the base magnification of the Halo is stated that it's 1.75, and it is stated that the base magnification of the Halo LR is 3.5. So naturally, you and I think, both of us are using Pulsar Trail XP50s, which are 1.6 power. So naturally, which one do we think we're going to gravitate towards?
Right.
Obviously the base or the regular Halo.
Right.
So you and I had the Halo, and both of us thought that even though it said it was a 1.75 base magnification, that it seemed lower than that. And I think a lot of people out there have stated the same thing that have used it. So I got the regular Halo. I was like, man, picture's great, but it's really low magnification. When I got the Halo LR, which again stated at a 3.5 base magnification, I thought, man, this is going to be too much magnification for me, for what I particularly like. And I don't feel, and you and I have talked about it, and we both agree on this, is that we don't feel that this is a base magnification of 3.5. We actually think it's less than that. Now, we don't know exactly what it is. This is a gut feeling. This isn't backed up by anything else other than you and I saying it, and some others out there who have said it, that they really don't feel like it's that high. Even though it's a 3.5, it doesn't seem that high.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm just going to jump in here and say that there's several scopes around the 1.5 to 1.6 power. So we have several things to compare to on the regular Halo. There's not near as many scopes in the 3 to 3.5 power. There's a lot of stuff. Pulsar's got several in the 2.1, 2.7, 2.8, and then you can go up in the FLIRs and the Trigicons into the, you got 2.5 and you go to 4. So that 3.5 is kind of a range that there's just not a whole lot of things that you can just put perfectly side by side like we could the regular Halo, again, next to the XP50, and say it's 1.75 versus 1.6, and it was definitely less. And so sometimes, the question is, well, which one is right? Maybe they're right and everybody else is wrong, and maybe it is, but I think the general consensus is that these units are a slightly lower magnification than what they're saying on the box.
So when we had a lot of time behind this scope, I think a lot of us, when somebody would call in or ask or email and say, hey, which one of these Halos is going to be better for, hog hunters that are taking 50 to 100 yard shots? Well, our first, just looking at the specs lined up side by side, we said the regular Halo. But I'm going to tell you, I think no matter what type of hunting that you're doing, whether it's hog hunting like I do at 50 to 100 yards, or you're coyote hunting in the Midwest and taking 200 yard shots, I think the best optic is this Halo LR, and this is the one I would suggest to anybody really in any kind of hunting conditions, assuming that $7,500 is in your budget. I
was about to say, assuming that you got the extra $1,500.
Exactly, yeah. But I think that this is a very versatile scope. It's right there in that kind of sweet spot for magnification, where it's not incredibly too high, but it's not too low that you can't take long shots. So it's right there, kind of in a perfect spot for what I think somebody that is needing a versatile scope. Everybody wants to know picture image. Unbelievable. I mean, and I'll let Jason get into the Trigicon versus the Halo LR talk a little bit more. But I mean, if you're looking for something out there that produces the best picture image possible, you don't need to, I think, look any further than the Halo LR, unless you're, looking at other things with Trigicon and you want to get some prices, or you want to have the name brand or the best out there that's been around for a number of years on the consumer side with Trigicon. But I'm going to tell you, after using this scope for as long as I did, and being able to ID animals, deer and coyotes and hogs at 600-700 yards, very easily, and taking shots on coyotes at 200, and I had two coyote kills with it. One was at 200 yards, one was close to 250, and I mean,
and you rarely shoot that far.
I know, and that's with both eyes closed. Can you believe that? So, unbelievable picture image. Now, I do, the nuke process, it's just something that we're accustomed to with Trigicon and now with NVision. I didn't find it to be too difficult at all, comparing that, this is something you have to do. It seemed like I was nuking that unit less than I was the Trigicon.
That's what I just wanted to jump in and say is on that nuking and refreshing, the recalibration of the thermal core, I definitely felt like I was doing it less than I was on the Trigicon.
Yep, absolutely. I think the button layout on the side, those buttons are on the left-hand side. I think that the layout of the buttons are perfect. I think as far as a scope, I think a lot of people get concerned about the ease of use and setup of a scope, but they've made it as easy and as simple as possible. And they provide a quick setup guide when you purchase the scope, which Some companies don't, and this is it's easy to understand, almost like on index cards that are laminated, that come with the scope, the easy setup guide.
Yeah.
All the presets are in there for you.
That's a big deal. I mean,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
is, and we talked about this on the regular Halo, and I think we've got to bring it up again. I mean, it's a really big deal. And I pulled out a Halo the other day and was using it, and it'd been a while since I'd used one, and I went in there. I had let somebody else use it, and those settings were all messed up. And so I go in there, and I'm like, okay, where does a gamma need to be? Where does this need to be? And I was like, I don't know, and I'm playing. I went in there, pulled those cards out, and what is so awesome is they give you a baseline of like, this is, you may want it somewhere else, but here's a baseline to start with. And I just followed their settings, boom, 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 changed them back. In 45 seconds, I was back out there going, oh, this is so much better. And, I don't know which setting it was causing the problem, but it was nice not having to sit there for 30 minutes trying to figure it out. And yeah, those laminated cards, I know they spent a bunch of time on those, but those are super, super helpful. And
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you. I just want to say, you might go, well, for $7,500, they ought to do it. Well, I agree, but you can spend $7,500 and not get it. It's unbelievable, and nobody else in the whole market, in my opinion, has spent the time, the effort, and the energy that they have to do those simple step-by-step instructions on how to use the scope.
Yeah, so kudos to them for making that setup process easy. Sometimes people, they feel overwhelmed by it or the idea of doing it, because they think, man, this optic is, one of the best out there in the market. It's going to be like trying to, program the space shuttle or something like that, but they did it. They did a really good job. I was really impressed with what they did in the setup and the ease of setup of the scope. Sighting in process, easy as pie. I mean, you get that scope out of the case and you slap it on the rifle and you're ready to go. And a quick story of a buddy ended up buying it he bought the demo unit that I was using. A guy out of Florida, his name's Todd, and he's messaged me on and off. But this guy's owned any type of thermal or every type of thermal there is. But he texted me and said, I cannot believe you sold me this and let this thing go. He said, it is the absolute best thermal I've ever had. And I told him, I was like, well, I didn't really want to sell it, but
it was our last one. And we were 2 months from getting more, and somebody wanted to buy one. So it's like, Hans, you've had it for 3 months. Let go. You're not getting it.
I know. That would have been a very nice buddy scope to have, though.
Yeah, good. It's a good buddy scope, a $7,500 buddy scope.
So, going back to my experience with it, shot many hogs, coyotes with it, and every time I put my face behind that eyepiece, I was just like blown away about how crystal clear the picture was, and the being able to take shots close up or range at long distances, it was no problem at all. And they've really, for their breakthrough units onto the consumer side, they've really knocked it out of the park, man. This an impressive show of force by this company. I hope, on SHOT Show 2020, we are talking about some new NVision thermal optics, because I will be very excited about that based on the quality of what we've seen so far.
I absolutely agree, and I'm gonna chime in here, and I just want to, because we keep talking about Trijicon, but we've got to, because they have come in. Trijicon, again, great optics. They've been around. Everybody knows the name. They bought out IR Defense, who was originally made these optics that are now the Trijicon optics, and we just keep comparing them. But when you have one company that's on the top of the hill, and they are everybody's trying to gun for them and improve their stuff, but everybody knows that they're just up there by themselves. And then you get somebody like NVision that comes in there, and they don't say, well, we're going to come up with something new and compete. We're going to take the same technology that you are. We're going to put it into our scope. We're going to try to improve on it, and we're going to, cut the cost a little bit and try to get in here and, really force some competition into that top end. And I think this is great for the market. I think it's going to be good for Trijicon. I think it's going to be good for NVision and all the consumers, because I think it's going to force those two companies to actually compete. And hopefully, prices get better and there's more technologies and things introduced and more options. And so I think it's going to be good in the long run. But I do want to talk about how it compares just briefly. I'm not going to do a full side-by-side review. We might do that later on, but I just want to mention a little bit of how it compares to some of the Trijicon more popular optics. And the first thing I'd say is there's three optics that we can compare it to. The one that's the most common is the MK3, the Mark III 60 millimeter. It's a 4.5 power scope. It's got a 60 millimeter objective lens, and it is $9,000. So it's $1,500 less than that. And the one thing I'd mention is that scope weighs 37 ounces as compared to the 28 ounces of the Halo LR. We could also compare it to the Type 1 REAP IR, which is a 2.5 optical magnification in a 25 millimeter objective lens, and it is $79.99. So it's $8,000. Again, the Halo is still less expensive than that, and I don't guess I wrote down the weight on that one. Then you've got the Type 2 REAP IR, and it's a 60 millimeter. And again, it is a 4.5 power. It's 32 ounces compared to 28, so you're getting closer, and it's $9,500. So you can see here, of all the three Trijicons that are the real competitors to this scope, it's got a great price. Now, the question comes down to, how does the image compare? Well, we know one thing. We know two things. They're using the exact same thermal core, and we know they're using the exact same OLED display. So you'd say image quality has to be the same, right? No, it doesn't. I would say that it's extremely close, but there is a pretty firm consensus amongst most people who are, I would say, trying to be unbiased, that the Halos actually have a slightly better image quality. Now, NVision has kind of hinted around that this could be because of they have, I think the claim is, a higher quality germanium lens. I don't know exactly what that means. I don't know if there's different levels of germanium, if that's true. I think it could also possibly be maybe some of the algorithms and the electronics, the things they've done in there. Maybe it is just that lens. But whatever it is, I think that the Halo not only competes, or the Halo LR, I think this goes for both of them, not only competes, I think it the argument can be made that it has a slightly better image quality. I don't think it's a big enough reason to say, oh my goodness, you have to buy the Halo LR. It's so much better. Right. No, I wouldn't at all say that. I would say that the argument can be made that it is slightly better. Go ahead.
And I will say this, we are not the only ones saying this.
Right.
So I don't think we're going out on by saying this. But there are a lot of people out there that have used both a lot and are saying the same thing that Jason's saying right now.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that, the last thing I would say really is just kind of my opinion of comparing the ease of use. And I know Hans mentioned that a little bit. I think that the Halo LRs are actually easier to use, and the regular Halo. I just think that the buttons on the left side, I know you're going to laugh.
I forgot to mention that. I wanted to mention that because I was going to say it was set up just for Jason.
It is. It's
buttons on the left hand side.
It is versus the REAP IR where it's on the right hand side. It doesn't make sense to me, but no, I do. I like those buttons. I think that they're slightly easier. But one thing, I get this all the time. There are some people that like the controls on the Mark IIs and the Mark IIIs, which are turrets on the top and the right side. There's some people that like the REAP IR better, which is the joystick on the right side. And by the way, I don't know which I just said on those Mark IIs. It's the top and the left. Anyway, and some people like the turrets. Some people like, the FLIR, the top buttons, and the pulsar. Folks, I think it's to each your own, and I'll tell you this. None of these scopes are difficult to operate. None of them. If you buy it and you use it, you get used to it, they're all going to be easy enough. Personally, if I had to choose one between the Trigicons and the Halo, I would go with the Halo for the controls. I do like those better. But again, I don't want to dive in too deep because we may do a side-by-side review later on. But I'm not throwing rocks at the Trigicons. If you own one, I'm not saying that there's any reason to go sell yours and buy this. But I do think that if you're looking for a secondary unit, or maybe this is going to be your first purchase into this high-end, top-of-the-line thermal, I would definitely consider the NVision Halo LR. And my last thing I'm going to say about it is something that I should have mentioned in the specs, and it is huge. It has a 5-year warranty, and no one else in this whole industry does that. The industry standard is 3 years, and FLIR does offer a 10-year warranty on the thermal core itself, but it's just a bumper-to-bumper 3-year across the board, except NVision, 2 extra years, and you got to figure out what that's worth. I mean, that can be worth a lot of money when you're talking about a scope this expensive to have 2 full more years. So anyway, that is our 2 cents on the Halo LR.
Well, I hope my wife is not listening because I don't want her to know exactly how much these things cost. she might. That's like 2, couple trips to Disney World for some of those Trigicon.
It's funny, and I'll say this as I know that you are the same way, and I think that most of us that use thermal are. The very first time, this has been several years ago, when I got my hands on the first thermal. Back then it was probably worth $5,000 or $6,000 for a cheap one. And when I was holding that thing, I felt like I needed on white gloves, and I was walking around like I was holding a nuclear bomb. And it's like, oh, I've got to set it down gently and wipe off my fingerprints. And I mean, you're like, this is so much money, and it is. I'm not making light of it, but then I'll catch myself out in the field and I'm like throwing it up on a dead hog, and there's blood running down the side. I'm thinking, wow, remember, it wasn't that many years ago when I had on gloves touching these things.
I bring in my rifle. Sometimes I'll set it down, and she's like, did you just have that on a dead hog for a picture? I don't want it on my chair.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
I want to do a show, and I think we're going to do a show here sometime of how to talk your spouse in, or how to get your spouse to understand why you need to buy a thermal.
Oh, my goodness.
So we're going to teach people out there how to have those conversations with their spouse, so their spouses are actually telling them that they need to go buy a thermal, and not having to try to beg them to get the credit card number.
I can't wait to hear how this goes, because my wife doesn't care, but I just can't wait to hear how Hans is going to be giving marriage advice. This is going to be great. This is I cannot wait. That'll be a very popular episode, I'm sure.
The key is you need numbers, so you need more than just yourself. You got to get some allies behind you to go up against the main boss.
An intervention of some sort.
Yes, exactly. Well, if you are interested in purchasing any of the NVision, the Halo or the Halo LR, give Jason a call at 877-350-1818. Again, you can check it out on OutdoorLegacyGear.com. If you want to see a full review of either of the 2 Halo scopes, you can check me out on YouTube at Hans ETX. That's Hans ETX. I've done full reviews on all the Halos, as well as reviews on a bunch of different scopes, and of course some hog and coyote kills. So what we want to give a shout out to and kind of highlight real quick, because Jason, we get a lot of people that call us from all around the country, and they love the show. They love checking out the social media accounts for all of our pictures and stuff. But a lot of times on social media, other than our YouTube videos, you just don't get a lot of information, and they want to either get into hog hunting, or, they're not around people that do it very often, but they're very interested and they want to talk to people that are like-minded. And they just want to know where they can find more information. So I wanted to highlight a couple of forums that I know, Jason, you and I are on, and we look at quite often, and we post in, but really go there for the content of the conversation. People talking about a lot of different scopes, optics out there. And I'll just go ahead and start with the one that I'm probably used the most often. You need to check them out. Even if you don't live in Texas, it's okay. You can still log in and get a and get a login. They won't decline you if you're not living in Texas. I've actually got it pulled up right now. It's called TexasHuntingForum.com. Real easy. TexasHuntingForum.com. There's many different sections in there, sub forums, but really the ones that I'm spending the most time in are the Hog Hunting Forum and the Optic Forum. And there's some great information in there, Jason. You can check out and learn a lot from.
There are, myself as well as a couple other dealers spend a lot of time in the Optics Forum answering questions. None of us are, trying to be overly salesy or anything, pushing anything in there. But I know of myself and a couple other dealers that do spend a lot of time just trying to answer questions for people, whether they bought their stuff from us or they're thinking about buying. And, we try to all play nice with each other. Some good guys in there. And so it's a great place. I would say for some of the, for optic information, I think that is probably one of the best forums that I've ever seen. And I cannot, Hans knows what I'm fixing to say here as soon as I start, but I can't talk about any kind of forums or anything online without giving the caveat of be very careful when you get optic advice in there. And I know that sounds self-serving because you can say, well, yeah, I only call you. No, you know what? Call another dealer who hunts with them and uses them. But I think, again, there's good information and you can get good firsthand reviews. But a lot of times I know we've got to be careful because a guy may have only ever seen his own optic. And so he's telling you why not to buy something else. He's never looked at it. But I think that forum is kind of an exception to the rule of there's a lot of guys who've used a lot of different scopes in there. And there's just, I think, a lot of good information. Again, talking about that hog hunting section of that forum is really good. There's a lot of guys asking questions. How do I do this? How do I do that? I know guys like Hans and some others chime in, and there's a lot of good videos and things posted. So I think that's a great forum.
Well, what's the one that you use? You're on all the time.
The one you're
always chatting it up.
The one that I spend the most time on, I'm actually a sponsor on, and I have been for probably 6 or 7 years, and that's TexasBowhunter.com. TexasBowhunter.com. Now, you're going to say, wait a minute, bow hunting? What's this got to do with bow hunting? Texas Bowhunter is one of the largest hunting forums on the internet. And yes, it did start many, many years ago as dedicated to bow hunting in Texas. But it has grown, and it too has many different sub forums. And there are tens of thousands of hunters on there. Most of them are from Texas, but there's a lot who aren't, and those guys fit right in. And nobody gives them a hard time because they're not from Texas. But it has grown way past bow hunting, and the reason is, most every guy in Texas who bow hunts is also a rifle hunter. That's just the way it works.
You're right. It is huge. And when I go try to get in there, I have to call you. I have to call Jason and be like, okay, how do I get there? And you're like, okay, go here, click here, and click. Well, I still can't find it.
Okay, so I'm gonna help you out. All right, so there's several subsections, but around the campfire, that's just kind of a catch-all, and it is a huge forum. It's very busy, lots of stuff going on, all kinds of different topics. I mean, it can be anything from the latest NFL football game to what pickup truck to buy. It's just everything's thrown in there. It's a great forum, and then the one that I would say we probably spend the most time in, especially me, is it's called The Other Side of the Ranch. Well, that kind of throws back to when it was only a bow hunting forum. And so the other side of the ranch is where most of the gun talk is. And there's a couple actually big threads in there about hog hunting and night vision and thermal. There was one that was like 5 years old, and it had thousands of posts in it, and the information was very, very old. So beginning of the year, we went in there and I actually started over and said, hey, let's start fresh with this, because when this original thread was started, an entry level thermal was $5,500 and it's like now entry level thermal's $1,900 for some good stuff. So let's start fresh. But that's a great place to go. You see a lot of pictures, a lot of videos posted in there. Again, people asking questions, and myself and some other guys try to go in there and answer. So TexasBowhunter.com. We'll give a shout out to them and say that is a excellent place to go for a lot of good information. Yeah,
another good one that I use is AR15.com. Again, it's a bunch of different.
That's a huge forum. There's wow, I get lost there for sure.
Yeah, it is anything, obviously AR-15 related, but a lot of people talk about other things. But there's a hog hunting section. It's in the general outdoors section folder, and you go in there and you can go to the hog hunting. But it's more of a nationwide or national forum, so there's a lot of different good conversations. But if you're interested in just getting more involved in the community, if you want to talk, like I said, talk to people that are like-minded, that are really into hog hunting or do it on a daily basis. If you're, living somewhere else where you don't have hogs, but you love to talk about hog hunting, or you want to, you get to go once a year and you fly somewhere and get to hunt, check out some of those forums, because they're really some good sources of information and lots of good videos, lots of good pictures. And it's definitely different than what you find on Instagram and Facebook.
Definitely.
It goes way more in depth and detail than what you'll find on the surface of some of the social media.
Yeah,
stuff.
And I don't want to jump off into that. I don't know why. You would think that kind of being anonymous on a forum would allow for shallower conversations and more dogging each other. And some forums are that way. I think that the ones, especially Texas Hunting Forum, Texas Bow Hunter, seem to be policed pretty well for that. But yeah, sometimes Facebook, it's I mean, man, people can cut to the bone and be rude and mean. And so those two forums that we just, especially, again, nothing wrong with AR-15, but especially Texas Bow Hunter and Texas Hunting Forum, they seem to be a lot of good guys, just everyday normal guys. So yeah, check them out. Folks, listen, we appreciate y'all tuning in again this week. This has been episode number 62, the full NVision Halo LR review. And we just really do appreciate the support that you give in the Late Night Vision Show, and Hans and I, and your support of Outdoor Legacy. Just keep tuning in every week. Hans has told you where to find us on all the social medias. Like, subscribe, follow, share, all that. And we just, again, appreciate what y'all do for us. And so for Hans and I both, we want to say thanks for listening, and we'll see y'all next week, and stay safe in the fields.